Hello, everyone. You will now hear a brief retelling of the movie, Beasts Without Borders. Enjoy watching it. A civil war has broken out in an African country. The school where Agu went to school was destroyed, and now the children have to invent their own ways to entertain themselves. For example, watching an imaginary television set without a screen, where they are actors instead of actors. Agu and the other refugees live in a buffer zone secured by Nigerians. A kind military man has agreed to exchange this garbage for food. His mother works hard to feed his brothers. His father used to be a teacher, but now he deals with refugee issues. His older brother only cares about his muscles and hair. Agu sometimes helps him wash his hair. The boys cut down a branch and throw it on the road to block the path of a passing car. For a fee of a few coins, they got the branch out of the way. Suddenly, they were attacked by a crazy woman who hates Agu's family and all the locals. And Agu's grandfather tells him that the lights are on, but no one is home. During dinner, the father saw that the box from his television set had been removed, and the insides had been placed on books. That's how Agu made two televisions out of one. The radio broadcasts disturbing news: the rebels are winning. A military junta has seized control of the country, armed men in armored vehicles, breaking the rules to enter the buffer zone. The community gathers in the church and decides what to do next. The women and children are urgently taken en masse to safety. Agu's mother wanted to leave with him and the youngest child, but the driver refused to take the boy. Agu started crying. He had to stay with the men on the streets of the city. Civilians are shot without a second thought. The family hid in one of the buildings. Suddenly a cannon was fired at it. Many panicked and ran outside and were immediately shot. The rest were put on their knees by government soldiers and interrogated. One woman had to identify the locals. It turned out that their lives were in the hands of a madman, and she said she didn't know any of them, which meant they were rebels. The commander ordered them all executed. Dad and Grandpa were shot. Agu and his brother were able to escape, but they were chased and shot on sight. Soon his little brother's face was blown off by a machine gun round and Agu was left all alone. He walks through the woods and cries. The next day Agu stumbles upon an abandoned hut, but he can't find anything to eat or make a fire. He has to eat leaves. Soon the boy vomits. After wandering around the jungle for a while longer, he encountered a squad of armed teenagers who were part of the army of one of the rebel factions. He is brought to the commandant in charge. He decides what to do with the boy. He asks him how he got here. Agu tells him the truth, that government troops killed his father and brother. The commandant decided that he would raise him and make him a warrior who would avenge the army that had robbed him of his family. The boy was immediately handed a box of ammunition, which he would carry through the jungle. After a while they came out to the camp. Agu and the other recruits, mostly children, would soon be initiated as soldiers. Our hero was taken aside and ordered another teenager to train him. Everyone around him, except Agu, is eating gruel. He also asked for a meal, which only caused the soldiers to laugh. He was made to stand on a stool and salute. He saw little Striker run into the commandant's hut. During training, the recruits were given sticks instead of machine guns. The rebels don't forget the brainwashing, either. They, the Ons, refuse to recognize the current government, which has robbed them of their natural wealth. On the battlefield, the People's Self-Defense militias do not think, but carry out the mission of the NS and destroy anyone who threatens them. At their leisure, the soldiers entertain themselves with a game of soccer, which could turn into a scuffle at any moment. The commandant for the militia is not just a commander, but a mentor with the king's privileges. His men are fighting against both the old government and the military junta. For Agu, it was time for initiation. The recruits were seated over the coals, blown by thick smoke. Afterwards, the boy ran through the crowd beating him with sticks. The boy, who lost consciousness during the ordeal, had his throat slit. Agu was placed in a grave to be reborn that way. The last stage was a firing squad. The machine guns were loaded with blanks, but the commandant told the boys that they were now invulnerable to their enemies. That, according to the commandant, was the end of the fun. They were going to war. The enemies of the rebels are not to find anything, so the camp was burned to the ground. Agu wanders through the jungle again with a box of ammunition on his head. When they reached the bridge, the guerrillas set up an ambush. Soon a convoy of automobiles appeared. A kid with a grenade launcher ran out in front of it and blew up the first car. The soldiers shot up the rest of the convoy, killing over a dozen people. One was taken prisoner. It's time for Agu to be initiated through the killing of a prisoner. The man swears that he is an engineer and was supposed to build bridges, but the commandant does not listen to him. Instead, he hands the kid a machete and suggests that he imagine he has a hard melon in front of him. People like him killed his father. Agu struck the first not hard blow. An experienced striker came up and showed him how to strike. When the captive fell to the ground, the boys continued to deliver blow after blow until they turned the man into mincemeat. That's how Agu deserved to get his assault rifle. Strike's mute handed him the uniforms that had been taken off the dead. The younger fighters became friends. When they don't have to kill, they play like normal kids. A helicopter flew overhead, and everyone immediately hid in the grass. At night, refugees came to the On's camp whose village had been overrun by the enemy army and killed most of the population. Well, says the commandant, then we'll fight it off. During the assault, Agu miraculously misses a stray bullet. Only part of the battalion went into the attack, led by the deputy commander. The main force stood at the edge of the village. The commandant called up Striko and Aga to show through the sniper scope how they were hitting enemy positions with a mortar. It seems his new little favorite is becoming Agu instead of Striko. The commandant set up the rest of the soldiers to go into battle, and they rushed to capture the bridge. Grenade launchers and machine guns are used. Agu fires a machine gun at the men for the first time. As a result of the successful attack, the enemy was forced out of the village. The insurgents celebrated this event with a victory dance. True, they lost 11 fighters, whose pockets were immediately emptied. The commandant is promised that if he captures the town he will be promoted to general. The man calls Aga to him. He tells him that they are getting close to the capital, where Agu's mother is now. Then he invited the boy into his bedroom, gave him a gift and told him that he was special. Well, then he ordered him to kneel down and do what the strikes had to do before. A friend guessed what the weeping Agu had just been through and helped him to the campfire. The On's army continued on its way. The soldiers approached the town and began shooting civilians while still in the field. The massacre continued in the city itself. Dozens of bodies lie in the streets. Agu is constantly being drugged, and he is already smiling at the hell that is going on around him. The boy runs into a rich house. During the sweep, the squad found a woman hiding with her daughter in a closet. Aga fell to his knees and hugged her and called her his mother. Then he came to his senses and accused the stranger of being a witch and drugging him. The girl was taken from her and kicked to death. The rest of the outlaws threw the woman on the bed, but Agu spoiled their fun and shot her. No one in town was left alive, and the last 2 residents were executed by shoving grenades in their teeth. The soldiers drove into the big city where the On's headquarters was located with an important look. However, the leader preferred to meet first with some Asians rather than with the commandant. Evening came, and Goodblood only receives foreigners in suits, forcing his loyal officer to languish outside. Eventually the company was seated in the reception room, and given a bag of water each. Finally, the next morning, the commandant was granted an audience with the supreme commander. The soldier was allowed to pounce on the food, which was left on the table. Goodblood reported that the whole world had learned of the conflict and the organization now needed to save face. They will not march on the capital, and he will not make the commandant a general. And his battalion will now be commanded by a deputy commander. The commandant, from now on, gets the post of deputy chief of security. What will his pay be? What portion of the resources will he get? Goodblood replies that he is only a soldier, it is his duty to obey. That's all. The commandant announces that there will be a party tonight, and brings the soldiers to some inconspicuous bar. Warm beer was handed out to the boys. The worried deputy commander wanted to leave, but the commander in charge wouldn't let him go. Everyone got a girl, except the youngest. They were left to guard the weapons. Suddenly a shot rang out. One of the young ladies was playing with a gun and shot the deputy commander. He thinks the commandant set it all up. The owner of the brothel and the guilty girl were immediately shot and the others were taken away with them. The deputy commander was dying. He took Aga by the hand and told him it was all for nothing. And then he breathed his last. And just like that, the battalion handover ceremony changed to a funeral. Immediately the commandant announces that the supreme commander is henceforth their enemy. They must take the territories and fill their pockets. Agu concluded that the only way not to fight was to be dead. During the night, an airstrike was launched on their camp. Many people died, including the new deputy commander. Even if the war ended, Agu would no longer be able to return to his childhood activities. He has nowhere else to go. Because of the lack of food, they have to eat grasshoppers. Just as the squad settles down for a halt, gunshots are heard. For some reason, Stryka refuses to go further. It turns out that the boy has been seriously wounded. Agu threw Straka on his back to save his friend. He was very tired, but continued to carry Strike until at one point he realized he was dead. The little fighter's body was covered with leaves and left lying in the middle of the jungle. Former On's soldiers sit in deep flooded trenches. It's been a long time since they understood what they were doing here. Agu was sent to fetch ammunition for the machine gun, but ran out of ammunition. The commandant calls Agu his son, which means the boy has to protect his father. The new deputy commander tells the commandant that they are leaving. The soldiers have been sitting here at the gold mine for months, and they haven't found any gold. And now they have no ammunition to shoot the enemy. There's no money, no food, people are getting sick and dying every day. It is madness. The commandant intimidates his men. Either prison or death awaits them next. They have nowhere to go. Uneducated cattle that even their families don't want to deal with, that's their future. The deputy commander pulled a machine gun on the man. Except he didn't have any ammunition, and then Agu turned the muzzle of his machine gun on the commandant, and the man knelt down and asked Agu to shoot him. Do you want to surrender? The commandant asks him, pointing his gun at his head. Yes, replies the boy. Well, get out of here. The frustrated general let his men go. In his mind, they would come again at his first call. Not one man stayed with the commandant. Lost children at the first opportunity to flood the UN troops. The youngest ones were put in a car at night, the rest were placed on the sand. After a while, Agu ended up at a missionary school in a safe part of the country. The boy stays away from the frolicking kids. He's in withdrawal, has nightmares at night, and remembers the smell of dead bodies for the rest of his life. Despite the fact that the boys now have food, a roof over their heads, and an opportunity to receive an education, some of them are eager to go to war again. Agu looks at the psychologist like an old man looks at a girl. After all, he knows what war is and she doesn't. The boy has seen terrible things and done terrible things. So if he talks about them, it will upset both him and the psychologist. The woman will think he's a beast or a devil. And all he wants is to be happy in this life. Finally, Agu runs to the playing children. He will try to start a new life.